Have you ever met someone online who seemed perfect in every way, but when you finally met them in person, that connection you felt online simply vanished? This disconnect isn't your imagination. It's rooted in the fascinating psychological phenomenon called the halo effect. It's how our brains create an idealized version of someone based on limited information, causing us to fill in gaps with positive assumptions. Today I'm going to show you exactly how your brain is playing these tricks on you in dating, and more importantly, what you can do to avoid falling into this common trap. You might be surprised how this same effect influences other areas of your life too. The perfect profile illusion. Meet Alex. For 3 weeks, they exchanged messages with someone who seemed to check every box on their ideal partner list. The dating profile showcased a fellow hiking enthusiast with the same taste in obscure indie films. Their text conversations flowed effortlessly, bouncing from philosophical discussions about life to sharing funny stories about their day. When this person mentioned they also volunteered at an animal shelter on weekends, Alex felt certain they'd found someone special. Every new detail seemed to confirm they were perfect for each other. Then came the coffee date. Alex arrived feeling excited, spotting their match immediately. They looked just like their photos. But as the minutes passed, that excitement faded into confusion. The conversation felt strained. Remember that discussion we had about Herzog documentaries? Alex asked enthusiastically. Oh, right, their date replied with a blank stare. I've only seen a couple, honestly. The witty jokes from their messages fell flat in person. This person was polite and reasonably attractive, but Alex felt an undeniable sense of disappointment. Walking home afterward, Alex wondered, how could someone who seemed so perfect online feel so wrong in person? This experience isn't unique to Alex. Research shows this disconnect happens to roughly 70% of online daters. That's 7 out of 10 people experiencing that same confusing mismatch between digital connection and real-world chemistry. Many describe meeting someone who matches their profile description and says similar things to what they wrote online, but something essential feels missing. What's happening here is the halo effect, a fascinating psychological phenomenon first identified by psychologist Edward Thorndike in 1920. When we see limited information about someone, a carefully selected group of photos, a thoughtfully written bio, and some text messages, our brains don't simply process what's there. Our minds actively fill in all the missing pieces with assumptions. When we find someone initially attractive or interesting, we tend to fill those gaps with idealized qualities. Dating profiles present an environment where we have just enough information to form an impression, yet not enough to truly know the person. Everyone selects their most flattering photos, crafts bios highlighting their best qualities, and naturally puts their best foot forward in early conversations. This isn't deception, it's normal human behavior in first impressions. Your brain, faced with these information gaps, constructs an elaborate mental image based on the limited details available. That profile mention of hiking? Your mind creates images of sharing breathtaking summit views together. Their joke about being competitive at board games? You imagine fun game nights where you laugh together. Each text message adds another brushstroke to this mental portrait. The problem comes when these gaps make up more of your impression than the actual information provided. By the time you meet in person, you're meeting them alongside the elaborate fantasy version you've constructed over days or weeks of digital interaction. This mental image is based on incomplete information that your mind has completed with optimistic assumptions. This creates an impossible situation for the real human sitting across from you at the coffee shop. They're being compared to an idealized version that no actual person could live up to. Even if they match every detail they shared online, they'll still fall short because your mental image included countless positive assumptions about how they laugh, how they listen, how they make you feel when you're together, things that can only be experienced in person. What makes this particularly challenging is that this process happens unconsciously. The disappointment feels genuine because the disconnect between expectation and reality is genuine. Your brain experiences it as a loss of the person you thought you were getting to know. In online dating, the halo effect becomes especially powerful. If someone's profile photos attract us, we unconsciously extend that positive impression to everything else about them. Their messages seem wittier. Their interests seem more aligned with ours. Their values seem more compatible. Even vague statements get interpreted in the most favorable light possible. This psychological mechanism made sense in our evolutionary past, when our ancestors lived in small communities with abundant information about potential partners. But in online dating, where we make judgments based on carefully curated snippets, this same mental shortcut becomes a liability. What happens during those first moments of meeting in person is your brain rapidly processing vast amounts of non-textual information. Their mannerisms, their scent, their energy, the rhythm of their speech, and comparing all of it against your mental image. The disconnect isn't about dishonesty. It's about the fundamental gap between the simplified, idealized version we create and the complex, three-dimensional human they actually are. Understanding this mechanism doesn't mean online dating is hopeless. Awareness of how your brain processes limited information can help you approach digital connections with more realistic expectations. The initial attraction you feel to a profile represents potential rather than certainty. But to truly understand how this works, we need to look at what's happening in your brain when you swipe right. Your brain on dating apps. What if I told you your brain processes dating profiles more like advertisements than actual people? This isn't a metaphor. It's literally what happens in your neurological system when you swipe through potential matches. Your ancient brain, the same one that evolved over millions of years to navigate complex social interactions in small tribes, now finds itself bombarded with simplified human representations reduced to a handful of photos and text. Our brains developed sophisticated systems for evaluating potential mates in face-to-face environments. When meeting someone in person, you process their voice tone, facial expressions, body language, smell, energy, and countless nonverbal cues outside your conscious awareness. These signals combine to create chemistry, that mysterious connection that either exists or doesn't. Dating apps strip away this rich information, leaving our brains with a fraction of the data they evolved to process. This information vacuum creates a psychological environment unprecedented before the digital age. Your brain, attempting to make sense of limited information, activates specific cognitive shortcuts to fill the gaps. These mental shortcuts are predictable patterns that app designers understand and leverage to keep you engaged. The most powerful mechanism involves your brain's reward system. Dating apps create an environment of abundance and uncertainty, two factors that activate dopamine circuits in your brain. Each time you open the app, your brain enters a state similar to sitting down at a slot machine. You don't know what profiles you'll see or who might have matched with you. This unpredictable reward structure, what psychologists call variable reward, creates a compelling urge to keep checking and swiping. Spotting an attractive profile releases a dopamine burst, the neurotransmitter involved in addiction, pleasure, and motivation. This chemical signal focuses your attention and creates wanting. Match with this person, and a larger dopamine surge follows, reinforcing your desire to continue using the app. Simultaneously, serotonin levels shift when browsing profiles, temporarily dropping in patterns similar to obsessive-compulsive disorder when you're attracted to someone. This neurochemical change explains why you check your phone repeatedly after an appealing match. Your brain has entered a mild obsessive state, focused on this potential reward. These neurochemical processes create powerful anticipation that often overrides logical thinking. Your rational brain knows that profiles represent only a fraction of someone's identity. Yet the emotional brain, driven by chemical signals, generates excitement that feels genuine. This creates a disconnect between your logical understanding and emotional experience. This attraction cocktail actively distorts cognition. When attracted to a profile, your brain fills information gaps with positive assumptions. Research shows that physical attractiveness creates a beauty premium, where we attribute positive qualities to good-looking people without evidence. This happens almost instantaneously on dating apps as you view photos. The pattern extends beyond physical traits. If someone loves traveling, your brain might create scenarios of exploring exotic locations together. If they're ambitious, you might imagine their successful career. Each tiny information piece becomes a foundation for elaborate positive assumptions, extending far beyond the actual data. Dating apps create perfect conditions for constructing unrealistic mental images. When someone's profile shows only their best photos and qualities, your mind treats these curated highlights as representative samples. Your brain fills in the missing 95% with projections based on hopes, past experiences, and media influences. These mental shortcuts evolved when making quick assessments of potential mates had survival advantages. What makes dating apps problematic is how they exploit the brain's tendency to generalize positive traits, the fundamental mechanism of the halo effect. When you see an attractive photo, your brain automatically assigns positive attributes to other aspects of that person's character. You assume someone with a warm smile is kind, or someone with thoughtful text is emotionally intelligent. Dating app interfaces amplify this effect through design choices. Photo prominence triggers immediate attraction responses. Limited character counts ensure insufficient information for complete pictures. Gamified swiping encourages quick judgments over careful evaluation. All these factors maximize the halo effect's influence on perception. Understanding these mechanisms doesn't mean dating apps are useless or online connections aren't real. Awareness of how your brain processes dating profiles helps you approach online dating with appropriate expectations and consciousness of cognitive biases. By recognizing that your brain treats profiles more like advertisements than whole people, you can counterbalance these tendencies. Remind yourself that connection feelings before meeting someone are primarily based on projections, not confirmed reality. Approach first meetings with curiosity rather than rigid expectations. The key insight is that dating apps create an environment where your brain's natural tendencies lead to systematic misperceptions. Your neurochemistry doesn't distinguish between actual social interaction and simplified digital representation. Understanding this mismatch gives you power to date more mindfully. Now that we understand what's happening in your brain, let's examine exactly how the halo effect works in dating. The halo effect explained. Imagine meeting someone who tells the most captivating stories you've ever heard. Their words paint pictures in your mind, and you find yourself hanging on every sentence. Now imagine how easily your brain might make a leap. This person is such an amazing storyteller. They must also be intelligent, honest, and would probably make a great partner. That unconscious mental jump exemplifies the halo effect in action. One positive quality casting a golden glow over everything else about a person. The halo effect is a cognitive bias where we take a single impressive characteristic and let it influence our judgment of unrelated qualities. Psychologist Edward Thorndike documented this phenomenon in 1920 through research with military officers. He discovered that when superiors rated subordinates highly in one trait, they tended to rate them higher across all traits, even when those characteristics had no logical connection. The positive impression created a halo that colored perception of everything else. This bias operates completely outside our awareness. When you meet someone with a great smile, your brain automatically tags them as trustworthy without your conscious permission. I once hired a consultant based largely on his confident presentation style, only to discover later he lacked the technical expertise I had assumed came with his polished delivery. This happens through effective conditioning. Positive feelings about one trait unconsciously transfer to your entire impression of the person in milliseconds. Our ancestors benefited from this mental shortcut. In small hunter-gatherer groups, using limited information to make broader judgments saved cognitive resources. If someone demonstrated strength in one context, assuming it extended elsewhere helped navigate social environments efficiently. Physical attractiveness triggers the strongest halo effect. Research shows attractive people benefit from positive assumptions about virtually every aspect of their character. One landmark study found attractive people are assumed to have better personalities, greater social skills, more successful careers, and even better marriages, without evidence beyond appearance. This attractiveness premium manifests in contexts from job interviews to criminal sentencing. In dating, this creates powerful cognitive distortion. When seeing attractive profile photos, your brain generates positive assumptions about personality, values, and compatibility before reading a word of their bio. See someone with a fit physique in hiking gear? You might immediately assume they're disciplined, adventurous, and health-conscious, qualities that extend far beyond what the image shows. These assumptions color how you process their profile information. When someone attractive mentions loving travel, you imagine them as culturally aware and good company on trips. If they mention their career, you assume ambition and intelligence. Each piece of information gets filtered through that initial positive impression, amplifying positives and minimizing negatives. Text conversations magnify this effect tremendously. Unlike face-to-face interaction requiring immediate responses, messages allow careful crafting of every word. People present idealized versions of themselves, sharing interesting thoughts while editing out negative comments. This selective self-presentation reinforces the halo you've placed around them. Messaging removes normal interaction friction. Someone might craft the perfect witty response over several minutes, making them seem effortlessly funny. They might research information before responding to questions, appearing remarkably knowledgeable. They carefully calibrate expressions of interest, creating an impression of perfect social awareness. These manufactured interactions strengthen your belief in their exceptional qualities. These exchanges deliver small hits of dopamine and oxytocin, neurotransmitters associated with pleasure and bonding. These chemical rewards reinforce attraction and strengthen positive assumptions. You become attached to the idealized version constructed in your mind. This creates a dangerous expectation gap. By meeting time, you've accumulated data points that seem to confirm this person's exceptional nature. But these aren't objective reality. They're filtered through bias, selectively presented, and interpreted through hopes and desires. You've built an impossible standard no real human can meet. When meeting in person, your brain processes unfiltered reality, tone, body language, scent, real-time reactions. This unedited version may contradict your perfect image, creating cognitive dissonance. Even without specific problems, the disconnect between mental image and actual person creates disappointment. This disappointment feels personal because to your brain, it is. You're experiencing the loss of someone you felt you knew intimately. Your emotional investment makes adjusting to reality jarring. The positive assumptions weren't random. They aligned with qualities you value, making the gap between expectation and reality particularly painful. The halo effect becomes particularly powerful in online dating because information is limited. With few concrete details, your brain fills gaps with assumptions based on generalized impressions. This explains why messaging can create stronger feelings than an in-person meeting. The imagined version offers perfectly curated experience reality cannot match. Understanding this bias doesn't mean abandoning hope. Awareness gives you power to recognize when assumptions exceed evidence. By identifying when you're filling information gaps with positive assumptions, you can maintain excitement while keeping expectations grounded in reality. But the halo effect doesn't work alone. It teams up with another psychological force called confirmation bias. Confirmation bias, seeing what you want to see. Have you ever noticed how easy it is to find evidence that someone is perfect for you when you really want them to be? You read their profile and discover they like the same obscure band you've loved for years. They mention loving dogs just like you. They use a phrase that reminds you of something your best friend would say. With each small connection, your excitement grows. This feeling isn't random. It's your brain actively working to confirm what you already want to believe. This psychological pattern has a name: confirmation bias. It describes our natural tendency to search for, interpret, and remember information that confirms our existing beliefs while minimizing contradictory details. In dating, this bias operates like an invisible filter, highlighting compatibility signals while rationalizing away potential mismatches. When confirmation bias joins forces with the halo effect, they create a powerful partnership that transforms your perception. While the halo effect generates that initial positive impression based on attractiveness or charm, confirmation bias strengthens this impression by collecting supporting evidence. The halo effect provides the "this person seems great" foundation, then confirmation bias builds walls and a roof of proof around it. Consider how this works with dating profiles. If someone writes, "I enjoy quiet nights at home and occasional adventures," your interpretation depends entirely on what you want. A homebody focuses on the quiet nights part, imagining cozy evenings together. An adventure seeker emphasizes the occasional adventures and wonders what exciting activities they might share. The same words get interpreted completely differently based on your existing hopes. Dating profiles frequently include ambiguous statements, allowing multiple interpretations. Phrases like, "I work hard and play harder," or "looking for someone who doesn't take life too seriously," can mean almost anything. These vague descriptions become blank canvases where you paint the specific details you want to see, mistaking projection for genuine compatibility. This explains why we often overlook potential warning signs during early interactions. If someone mentions they recently got out of something complicated, your brain might reframe this red flag positively. They're honest about their past, or that means they're available now. Similarly, concerning patterns in how they describe past relationships might get dismissed if you've already decided they're promising. We find psychological comfort in believing we've found an ideal match. Finding someone who seems compatible triggers a sense of relief and excitement. Your brain releases dopamine and oxytocin, feel-good chemicals associated with bonding, when you discover seeming evidence of compatibility, reinforcing your focus on positive signs. Text conversations particularly amplify confirmation bias through selective interpretation. Consider this exchange, them. Crazy day at work. Finally home. You. Those days are the worst. What do you do to unwind? Them. Usually just Netflix and takeout. From this minimal information, you might construct elaborate narratives. They work hard, admirable. They value downtime, compatible with your lifestyle. They enjoy relaxing at home, just like you. In reality, you know almost nothing substantive about their work ethic, values, or how they'd act in a relationship. The time between messages allows your brain to fill gaps with positive assumptions. If someone takes hours to respond, you might think, they must be busy with important work, rather than, they're not very interested. Each message becomes an opportunity to strengthen your positive narrative, rather than objectively assess compatibility. Face-to-face interactions are fundamentally different. In person, you see unfiltered reactions, how they treat service staff, handle minor frustrations, or listen when you speak. Without these reality checks, your imagination builds an increasingly detailed fantasy about who this person is. The combination of limited information and confirmation bias creates a dangerous situation. You develop emotional connection to someone who doesn't actually exist. The person you're excited about is largely a construction of your hopes built around carefully presented information. You've filled countless blanks with positive assumptions that remain completely untested. This doesn't mean the other person is being deceptive. They're likely doing exactly the same thing, constructing an idealized version of you based on their own hopes. Both of you essentially develop relationships with mental constructs rather than with each other's complex selves. By the time you meet in person, you've both invested in elaborate fantasies that no real human can satisfy. This explains why many first dates, after extended messaging, feel disappointing, even when nothing obviously goes wrong. The real person simply cannot compete with your idealized version. Understanding confirmation bias doesn't mean becoming cynical about dating. The goal is recognizing how your mind processes limited information while maintaining appropriate skepticism. When you catch yourself creating elaborate narratives based on minimal evidence, remind yourself that you're seeing possibilities rather than certainties. Maintain curiosity about who this person actually is rather than becoming attached to who you hope they might be. When these cycle the expectation gap. What happens when the person you've been texting for weeks finally sits across from you at a coffee shop? You've spent hours imagining their laugh, how they'll gesture when telling stories, and the way their eyes might light up when discussing shared interests. Then reality walks through the door, and within minutes, you feel a strange disconnect. This person looks like their photos and says things that match their messages, but something feels different. Something you can't quite name. This moment of disconnect is what I call the expectation gap. The psychological space between the person you've constructed in your mind and the actual human being in front of you. Think of it like watching a movie after seeing only the trailer. The characters and plot points match, but the full experience reveals dimensions impossible to anticipate from carefully edited snippets. This gap creates immediate disappointment, even when everything seems objectively fine. You might sit through an entire date feeling vaguely let down while struggling to identify any specific problem. If asked why the connection feels different in person, you might resort to vague explanations like, the chemistry wasn't there, or something just felt off. Your brain experiences cognitive dissonance, mental discomfort from holding contradictory beliefs. Weeks of positive messages, and your detailed mental image clash with the real-time experience that somehow doesn't align. Your brain resolves this conflict by generating disappointment rather than consciously processing the mismatch. Research shows we form impressions within 7 seconds of meeting someone. In those moments, your brain collects information absent from online interactions, primarily nonverbal cues that make up approximately 93% of face-to-face communication. Consider voice alone. The sound carries information about emotional state, confidence, sincerity, and personality. Pace, volume, and vocal resonance all affect perception. A voice different from what you imagined creates unfamiliarity with someone you thought you knew. Facial microexpressions last just 1/15th to 1/25th of a second, but reveal authentic feelings that may contradict words. Your brain processes these unconsciously, creating gut feelings about someone before you've registered why. When expressions don't match the emotional tone you imagined while reading messages, powerful discord follows. Body language provides crucial data missing from digital communication. How someone sits, their physical confidence, eye contact, and overall energy require immediate recalibration of your impression. Scent and pheromones play a significant role in attraction. Humans possess sophisticated olfactory systems that assess biological compatibility outside conscious awareness. Research suggests we detect genetic compatibility and immune system complementarity through scent processing. No amount of messaging can predict this fundamental aspect of attraction, explaining why perfect online connections sometimes feel flat in person. The temporal nature of in-person interaction differs dramatically from messaging. Text conversations happen asynchronously, allowing time to craft responses and present idealized versions of ourselves. In-person conversations require immediate responses without editing. You see authentic reactions rather than carefully crafted ones. The way someone handles conversational lulls or unexpected topics reveals aspects of personality that messaging can mask. Context also contributes to the expectation gap. When messaging, you typically do so from comfortable environments at convenient times. Meeting in person introduces shared context. Navigating the same environment and experiencing conversation within the same physical space. This shared reality removes the ability to control the interaction as completely as through messages. These differences create the perception of meeting someone entirely new. Your brain must reconcile your mental image with new information, creating cognitive strain that registers as something feeling off or different. The gap's asymmetrical nature compounds the challenge. Both people experience disappointment as reality fails to match imagination, creating a cycle of subtle disconnection. The first few minutes prove critical in navigating this transition. Initial judgments strongly influence how we interpret all subsequent information. If the disconnect feels too significant, confirmation bias reinforces that negative impression. However, maintaining openness during those critical first minutes allows your mental image to adjust without judgment. This explains why many dating coaches emphasize keeping first meetings brief, providing just enough time to assess basic compatibility without extended interaction if the expectation gap proves too significant. The shorter timeline prevents the awkwardness of both people recognizing the disconnect, but feeling obligated to continue. Understanding the psychological mechanics of the expectation gap doesn't eliminate it, but awareness helps manage its impact. By recognizing that the disconnect is a natural consequence of brain processing rather than something the other person did wrong, you can approach first meetings with more realistic expectations. The question isn't whether an expectation gap will exist. It always will, but whether the actual person is someone you want to know better, regardless of how they compare to your mental image. Now that we understand the problem, let's look at what actually matters when assessing compatibility in person. The green flags you're missing. What if the most important compatibility signals have nothing to do with the traits you're screening for online? Think about it. How many dating profiles have you seen where people list their favorite shows, music, travel spots, and hobbies? We've been trained to believe these surface details predict relationship success. But research consistently shows these shared interests have almost no correlation with long-term relationship satisfaction. The traits that truly matter can only be observed when you're sitting across from someone, watching how they move through the world. Genuine compatibility emerges from subtle in-person dynamics that no dating profile can capture. These signals operate largely below conscious awareness, yet they provide reliable information about whether someone will make a good partner. While you're checking if they match their photos, your unconscious mind processes dozens of significant compatibility markers that determine whether this relationship has potential. I want you to reconsider what actually predicts relationship success. Those Netflix shows or travel destinations. They might give you conversation topics, but they tell you almost nothing about how this person will show up in a relationship. Instead, notice the subtle green flags that signal authentic connection, signs that become immediately apparent in person. Active listening is a crucial green flag. Watch how someone responds when you share something personal. Do they maintain appropriate eye contact? Do they ask thoughtful follow-up questions? Imagine telling a date about a challenging work situation. A good listener might say, "That sounds difficult. How did you handle that?" Showing they're truly absorbing what you've said rather than waiting for their turn to speak. This skill demonstrates the capacity for emotional connection that sustains relationships. Equally revealing is comfort with silence. Many people nervously fill every quiet moment with chatter on early dates. But someone who can occasionally sit in comfortable silence with you demonstrates security and emotional maturity. Picture sitting at a cafe after an engaging conversation, simply enjoying each other's presence without awkwardness. This quality becomes invaluable in long-term relationships, where being together without constant activity creates deep emotional intimacy. Emotional attunement might be the most significant green flag. Someone's ability to notice and respond to your feelings. Watch how they react when you express excitement or concern. Do they match your emotional tone? Someone who notices when your energy shifts during the date and gently asks, "Is everything okay?" shows the empathy that forms the foundation of secure attachment. How your date treats service staff reveals volumes about their character. When your server brings the wrong order, do they respond with patience or irritation? Do they make eye contact, say please and thank you? Their behavior in these moments shows their baseline respect for others and how they handle small frustrations. Critical information about their partnership potential. Unexpected situations provide another window into compatibility. When the restaurant loses your reservation or rain disrupts your park date, does your date become flustered and blame others? Or do they laugh and suggest an alternative? Someone who pivots gracefully demonstrates resilience and flexibility, qualities that predict how they'll handle inevitable relationship challenges. Notice how they discuss other people in their lives, particularly ex-partners. Someone who says, "We wanted different things, but she taught me a lot about communication," shows emotional maturity compared to someone who dismisses all exes as crazy. The ability to recognize their contributions to past relationship dynamics suggests the self-reflection necessary for growth. Authentic curiosity indicates relationship potential that transcends surface attraction. Does this person ask questions beyond the standard first date script? Someone genuinely interested in understanding your perspective shows capacity for the ongoing discovery that keeps relationships vibrant. Can they engage with viewpoints different from their own? If you express a different opinion about a book or current event, do they respond with respectful interest or immediate disagreement? Someone who explores different perspectives demonstrates intellectual humility and emotional security, traits essential for healthy conflict resolution. The synthesis of these green flags creates authentic chemistry, that mysterious connection transcending physical attraction or shared interests. This chemistry emerges from nonverbal communication, emotional responsiveness, and values alignment that can only be assessed in person. It's about how safe you feel in their presence, and whether your authentic selves emerge in each other's company. These green flags can't be captured in dating profiles or detected through text conversations. They emerge only through direct interaction, often within the first 30 minutes of meeting someone. Learning to recognize these signals helps you focus on what truly matters, rather than getting distracted by surface-level compatibility or physical attraction alone. While these green flags matter, equally important is recognizing the red flags that the halo effect might be hiding. Red flags the halo effect hides. Why do we so often ignore warning signs that seem obvious in hindsight? I've watched countless friends describe relationships that ended badly, saying things like, "Looking back, the red flags were there from the first date." The puzzling thing is that many of these people are otherwise perceptive and self-aware. They wouldn't ignore warning signs in other areas of life. They wouldn't buy a car with strange engine noises or move into an apartment with obvious water damage. Yet in dating, they dismiss concerns that later prove significant. The halo effect creates a specific type of blindness to red flags. When we're attracted to someone, that positive impression actively prevents us from registering concerning behaviors right in front of us. Attraction creates a powerful cognitive filter. Information contradicting our positive impression causes mental discomfort called cognitive dissonance. Rather than experience this discomfort, our brains maintain consistency by reinterpreting negative signals more favorably. This filtering happens outside conscious awareness. Your brain processes information differently when you're attracted to someone. A comment that would seem controlling from anyone else gets reinterpreted as they really know what they want. A behavior that would register as self-centered from a coworker gets relabeled as confident or ambitious when you're interested in the person. Consider Emma, who met Jake for coffee. When he ordered for her without asking and dismissed her preference for tea, She felt a momentary discomfort, but quickly reframed it as decisive in her mind. Later, when Jake interrupted her story about work to talk about his own promotion, the halo effect transformed what would normally be rudeness into passionate ambition through attraction's distorting lens. First dates often contain subtle warning signs we rationalize away. Pay attention if your date consistently brings conversation back to themselves without showing genuine interest in your life. There should be natural curiosity about who you are. Someone who speaks extensively about their own accomplishments without creating space for yours is showing their conversational pattern, one that extends to how they approach relationships. Notice how they respond when you express a different opinion. Do they become dismissive or show signs of disapproval? Someone who can't engage with viewpoints different from their own often lacks the flexibility and respect necessary for healthy relationships. They should demonstrate ability to consider perspectives beyond their own. Watch for early boundary pushing, those moments when someone ignores your stated preferences. This might look like touching you in ways that feel premature or pressing for personal information you're uncomfortable sharing. These moments provide valuable data about how this person approaches others' boundaries. Someone who disregards small boundaries early will likely disregard larger ones later. How they talk about past relationships offers crucial information about patterns they'll likely repeat with you. If someone describes all their exes as crazy or impossible to please, they're showing they take no responsibility for their role in relationship dynamics. Equally concerning is someone who speaks with contempt about former partners, revealing how they might one day speak about you. Look for inconsistencies between stated values and behaviors. If someone claims to value honesty, but presents a highly curated version of themselves, or emphasizes respect but treats service staff poorly, they're showing the gap between their idealized self-image and reality. Notice conversational dominance, interrupting you frequently, dismissing your contributions, or always needing the last word. Someone who controls the conversation is showing how they approach power. Dynamics more broadly, which often extends to decision-making in relationships. Watch how they handle minor frustrations. Does slow service trigger disproportionate irritation? Does a changed plan cause notable agitation? These responses provide insight into emotional regulation. The challenges on a first date are minimal compared to inevitable relationship stressors. Pay attention to how they respond to vulnerability. If you share something personal and they respond with dismissal or changing the subject, they're demonstrating low emotional intelligence and possible discomfort with intimacy. The halo effect transforms these red flags into traits we find appealing. Controlling behavior becomes taking charge. Self-centeredness becomes confidence. Dismissiveness becomes rationality. This explains why many people repeatedly attract partners with the same problematic patterns. Developing awareness of these biases helps you make better dating decisions. This means recognizing that your perceptions are influenced by unconscious processes and creating mental space to notice behaviors without immediately interpreting them through attraction's filter. By understanding the halo effect's influence, you can temporarily suspend judgment when meeting someone new, noticing behaviors without immediately assigning meaning. This creates space for accurate assessment of whether someone's patterns align with your relationship needs. The goal isn't perfect objectivity, but conscious recognition of how attraction shapes perception. Now that we know what to look for, let's explore practical strategies to manage expectations and assess authentic chemistry while protecting ourselves from these perception distortions. Managing expectations without cynicism. Is it possible to stay hopeful about finding connection while being realistic about human psychology? After everything we've covered about cognitive biases and the challenges of modern dating, you might be feeling a bit discouraged. Maybe you're wondering if genuine connection is even possible when our brains seem wired to trick us. This tension between hope and reality represents one of the most challenging aspects of dating in the digital age. Understanding the psychological mechanisms at play in attraction doesn't mean becoming cynical about finding connection. Knowledge of these biases actually increases your chances by helping you navigate the dating landscape more effectively. The goal is to ground your hope in reality rather than fantasy. Many people fear that thinking analytically about dating will kill the magic of connection. They worry that understanding the psychological components of attraction might reduce love to chemical reactions or cognitive processes. But awareness of how these mechanisms work enhances the experience of connection by helping you distinguish between authentic chemistry and cognitive illusions. The first mindset shift involves embracing curious skepticism. This approach balances openness to possibility with healthy questioning of your initial impressions. Rather than blindly believing the story your brain tells about a new person, or cynically assuming all connections are illusory, curious skepticism means holding initial impressions lightly. You acknowledge the excitement, while remembering it's based on limited information, filtered through cognitive biases. This balanced perspective sounds like, I'm enjoying getting to know this person and feeling excited about the possibilities. I also recognize that my impression is based on limited information, and I'm willing to adjust it as I learn more. This mental stance creates space for both hope and realism to coexist. Intentional expectation management significantly improves dating experiences. Before meeting someone new, check in with your expectations. Notice if you've constructed an elaborate fantasy. Remind yourself you'll be meeting an actual human being, not an idealized version. Create mental flexibility to experience the person actually sitting across from you. Frame this process positively. Instead of thinking, they probably won't be as great as they seem online. Try, I'm curious to discover who this person really is beyond what I've seen online. This maintains optimism while creating space for reality. Another powerful shift involves approaching first dates as genuine exploration rather than confirmation of compatibility. When you've been messaging someone for weeks, it's natural to feel you're simply confirming what you already know. Instead, approach the first meeting as the true beginning of getting to know each other, regardless of how much you've communicated online. This exploratory mindset transforms first dates. Rather than determining if someone matches your predetermined image, you're gathering genuine information about who they are. This shifts your attention from internal comparisons to external observation. The pressure decreases because you're discovering what's actually there. Presence serves as the foundation for this exploratory approach. When fully present during a date, you can notice actual signals of compatibility rather than searching for confirmation of preconceived notions. Presence means bringing your attention to the current moment, how the person speaks, responds to questions, and how you feel in their company. This presence creates space for authentic connection if it's there to be found. When both people approach with open, present attention rather than rigid expectations, they create optimal conditions for genuine chemistry to develop. Realistic expectations actually increase your chances of finding genuine connection. When you release attachment to specific outcomes or predetermined images, you can recognize authentic compatibility that might not match your mental checklist. Many people miss potential connections because they're so focused on finding someone who matches their preconceived image. This realistic approach also protects against the emotional roller coaster common in modern dating. When expectations are inflated by prolonged messaging and the halo effect, disappointment becomes almost inevitable. By maintaining realistic expectations from the beginning, you experience less dramatic disappointment and remain open to possibility. The most valuable mindset shift involves redefining success in early dating. Measure success by what you've learned, not whether you've found the one. Consider each date valuable if you've gained insights about yourself. Use disappointing dates as opportunities to clarify what you're looking for. See each interaction as moving you closer to meaningful connection. By integrating these mindset shifts, you create an approach to dating that honors both hope and reality. You remain open to possibility while grounding your expectations in psychological reality. This balanced perspective enhances your ability to recognize genuine connection when it appears, as you're no longer blinded by projection or discouraged by repeated disappointment. These mindset shifts create the foundation. First date psychology, beyond small talk. What if most first date advice completely misses what actually creates connection? Think about the standard wisdom. Prepare interesting stories, ask about their job, mention your achievements, discuss travel experiences, and avoid controversial topics. These suggestions focus entirely on what to say, but almost completely ignore how we say it and the underlying purpose of first date conversations. The typical advice creates polished performances rather than genuine connection. The problem with this approach becomes clear when you consider what you're actually trying to accomplish on a first date. You're assessing whether this person might become someone significant in your life, someone you might eventually share your deepest self with, navigate challenges alongside, and possibly build a future together. Standard small talk simply doesn't provide the information needed for this assessment. This is especially problematic in the context of dating apps, where you've likely already covered basic biographical information through messages. Many first dates become awkward recitations of facts you've already exchanged online. The person mentions their job in marketing, which you already knew. You talk about your recent trip to Portugal, which you already mentioned. This exchange feels stilted because it serves no real purpose. You're not learning anything new about each other. Small talk keeps the interaction at a surface level. While discussing favorite movies or travel destinations feels safe, these topics reveal almost nothing about compatibility in areas that actually predict relationship success. Emotional responsiveness, conflict style, values alignment, and how you make each other feel. So what conversation approaches reveal compatibility more effectively? The key lies in focusing on experiences and responses rather than facts and achievements. Instead of asking where someone went to college, ask about a learning experience that changed how they see the world. Rather than discussing job titles, explore what parts of their work they find meaningful. Sharing appropriate vulnerability creates stronger connections than listing achievements. This means gradually moving beyond polished self-presentation to share authentic thoughts and feelings. You might acknowledge the nervousness of first dates, share a minor challenge you're currently navigating, or express genuine emotion about something you care about. Consider Maya and James's first date. Instead of the usual resume exchange, Maya asked what James found most fulfilling about his work as an engineer. His eyes lit up as he described helping communities access clean water, revealing his values of service and impact. When James later mentioned feeling nervous about dating again after a breakup, Maya shared her own experience of learning to trust again. That moment of mutual vulnerability created more connection than hours of small talk could have. The neuroscience behind this approach is compelling. When we share something slightly vulnerable and receive an empathetic response, our brains release oxytocin, a hormone associated with bonding and trust. This neurochemical response creates a sense of connection more powerful than any shared interest in travel destinations or Netflix shows. Discussing values rather than facts creates meaningful understanding because values reveal the why behind someone's choices. Values-based conversations reveal potential alignment in life approaches and priorities, which better predicts long-term compatibility than surface-level similarities. These deeper conversations also allow you to assess emotional intelligence through specific questions and observations. Notice how they respond when you express a different opinion. Do they get defensive, or can they engage thoughtfully with different perspectives? Pay attention to whether they ask follow-up questions that build on what you've shared, or simply wait for their turn to speak. Certain questions can be particularly revealing while still feeling natural. What's something you've changed your mind about recently? Reveals capacity for growth. How do you recharge when you're feeling drained? Provides insight into self-awareness. What's something people misunderstand about you? Often reveals aspects of identity that matter deeply. Authentic curiosity creates the foundation for meaningful exchanges. When you're genuinely interested in understanding someone rather than evaluating them against a checklist, conversations naturally deepen. This curiosity manifests in your follow-up questions, attentive listening, and willingness to be surprised. This approach doesn't mean first dates need to feel like therapy sessions. The art lies in balancing depth with lightness, meaningful exchanges with playfulness. The most connecting conversations flow naturally between depth and simple enjoyment of each other's company. What makes these approaches powerful is how they create conditions where authentic chemistry can be accurately assessed. Deeper exchanges bring forth more of who each of you actually is, allowing your nervous systems to interact more authentically. The beauty of this approach is that it doesn't require memorizing clever questions or performing. It simply means showing up with genuine curiosity, appropriate openness, and attention to how this person makes you feel rather than just what they say. But even with the best conversation, there's one more critical element to assessing compatibility: the chemistry of presence. What if the most powerful attraction factor isn't physical appearance, but something much more subtle? We focus so much on how we look, what we say, and the impression we make that we often miss the most fundamental element of connection: simply being fully present with another person. This quality of presence, of being completely engaged in the moment rather than caught in thoughts about the past or future, creates a magnetic field that no carefully selected profile photo or clever message can match. Think about how rare genuine presence has become in our digitally distracted world. Most of us spend our days partially present at best, with attention split between the person in front of us and the device in our pocket. We've normalized a state of continuous partial attention, being somewhat engaged with multiple things simultaneously, but never fully engaged with anything. Imagine sitting across from someone who maintains unwavering eye contact, nods thoughtfully at your words, and responds with questions that show they've truly absorbed what you've shared. This focused attention feels extraordinary simply because it's become so uncommon. The dating environment especially works against presence. First dates typically trigger performance anxiety, worrying about saying the right things, appearing attractive, avoiding awkward moments, and managing impressions. This anxiety pulls us out of the present moment and into self-conscious monitoring. We become observers of our own behavior rather than participants in genuine exchange. Meanwhile, the habits formed through digital communication create additional barriers to presence. Dating apps condition us to evaluate others quickly and superficially. Text conversations allow for careful curation of responses rather than spontaneous reaction. By the time we meet someone in person, we've often developed patterns of interaction that maintain distance rather than allowing authentic connection. When you manage to be fully present on a date, something remarkable happens in your nervous system. Your body relaxes as stress hormones decrease. Your facial expressions become more natural and responsive. Your voice finds its authentic tone. These subtle physical changes are immediately perceptible to the other person, even if they don't consciously identify what's different. They simply register that you feel more real than most people they meet. This state of presence creates a unique physiological condition that enables genuine connection. Research in interpersonal neurobiology shows that when two people are fully present with each other, their nervous systems begin to synchronize. Heart rates, breathing patterns, and even certain brain waves start to align. Like musicians finding a common rhythm, two people in genuine presence create a harmony that transcends words. That mysterious sense of resonance that either exists or doesn't when meeting someone new. You can actively enhance presence during dates with simple mindfulness techniques. Before the date, take 3 deep breaths and set an intention to be fully present rather than focused on outcomes. During moments when you notice your mind wandering to self-conscious thoughts, gently bring your attention back to your senses, what you can see, hear, and feel in the present moment. When the other person is speaking, practice listening with your full attention rather than planning your next response. These practices sound simple, but prove revolutionary in dating contexts. When you stop treating the date as a mutual interview and start experiencing it as a moment-by-moment unfolding of connection, everything changes. The conversation flows more naturally. You notice subtle signals of compatibility or incompatibility that you might otherwise miss. The quality of your presence directly affects what aspects of yourself become accessible during the interaction. When caught in self-conscious performance, only your most practiced, polished traits appear. Essentially, your dating persona rather than your authentic self. With genuine presence, aspects of your natural personality emerge spontaneously. Your sense of humor, your compassion, your unique way of seeing the world. This authenticity works both ways. When you're fully present, you create psychological safety that allows the other person to step out of performance mode as well. Your genuine attention invites their authentic self to emerge rather than their dating mask. This means you get to see aspects of who they really are much earlier, providing accurate information about compatibility. Presence enables more accurate assessment of compatibility because it shifts your attention from internal checklist matching to direct experience. Instead of mentally comparing this person to your ideal partner profile, you notice how you actually feel in their company. Do you feel energized or drained? At ease or on edge? Does conversation flow naturally or feel forced? What makes presence particularly powerful is how it interrupts projection. Presence counteracts the halo effect by keeping you anchored in what's actually happening rather than what you imagine. You remain connected to your authentic responses rather than getting caught in fantasy projections. The quality of presence similarly disrupts confirmation bias. When you're fully present, you're more likely to notice information that contradicts your initial impression rather than selectively filtering for details that confirm it. You become more receptive to the complexity of the actual person. Presence allows for the natural development of attraction rather than forcing or analyzing it. This open, attentive state creates optimal conditions for authentic chemistry to emerge if it's there to be found. Now that we've covered all these elements, let's bring everything together. The awkward truth about chemistry. What if those uncomfortable, awkward moments on your dates aren't signs of poor chemistry, but actually the most revealing windows into compatibility? We've all been trained to believe that good connection means effortless conversation, constant comfort, and seamless interaction. Dating advice typically focuses on how to avoid awkward pauses and maintain smooth conversation flow. But this perspective misses something crucial about human connection. The truth is that awkward moments are inevitable when two authentic humans interact. No matter how socially skilled or compatible two people might be, moments of misalignment, misunderstanding, or simple silence naturally occur. These moments serve as opportunities to discover something essential about each other that polished performance never reveals. Dating typically involves both people arriving with prepared stories, rehearsed topics, and armor against vulnerability. This creates an artificial environment where you meet carefully constructed presentations rather than real people. The genuine information about compatibility emerges when those performances break down. Consider how someone handles silence. In our hyper-connected world, comfortable silence has become rare. When a natural lull occurs in conversation, what's your date's response? Do they become visibly uncomfortable, desperately searching for the next topic? Do they pull out their phone? Or can they simply exist in the silence with you, allowing natural rhythm to include both speech and pause? I once went on a date where we both reached for water at the same time, knocking over a glass that soaked the table. After a moment of wide-eyed surprise, we locked eyes and burst into simultaneous laughter. That small moment revealed more about our compatibility than hours of perfect conversation could have. We still reference that spill years later as the moment we truly connected. A person comfortable with occasional silence demonstrates self-assurance, emotional security, and capacity for deeper connection. They don't need constant validation or entertainment. Qualities invaluable in long-term relationships where the ability to simply be together creates emotional intimacy beyond words. Equally revealing is how someone recovers from social missteps. Everyone occasionally says something that comes out wrong or touches on a sensitive topic. The important part isn't that these moments happen, but how the person handles them. Can they acknowledge awkwardness with good humor? Apologize simply? Adjust and move forward naturally? How someone navigates these small recoveries predicts their capacity for relationship resilience. Life brings misunderstandings and moments where we don't show up as our best selves. A person who navigates minor social awkwardness with grace likely brings that same adaptability to larger relationship challenges, demonstrating the ability to repair connection rather than becoming defensive. Unexpected situations bypass social masks, revealing authentic personality. When something unplanned occurs, a lost reservation, a spilled drink, an unexpected encounter, you witness unfiltered responses. Notice whether unexpected developments bring out flexibility and humor or rigidity and irritation. Someone who pivots gracefully when plans change likely brings that adaptability to relationship navigation, revealing core personality traits that predict long-term compatibility. Awkward moments create opportunities for vulnerability that build genuine connection. When something uncomfortable happens and both people acknowledge it authentically, a unique bond forms. This mutual recognition, that was awkward and we're both still here, creates an experience of acceptance that deepens connection. The mutual navigation of awkwardness builds essential relationship skills. Two people learning to move through uncomfortable moments together, finding humor, extending grace, adjusting and continuing, are practicing exactly what lasting partnership requires. They demonstrate the ability to encounter difficulty without becoming defensive or withdrawing, revealing compatibility on a deeper level than any assessment of common interests. This perspective challenges cultural messaging about connection. Movies portray chemistry as constant intensity and seamless interaction, creating unrealistic expectations. Real chemistry isn't about perfect flow. It's about how two specific people create their unique rhythm together, including how they handle inevitable misalignments and recoveries. Rather than avoiding awkward moments through careful preparation, welcome them as valuable information. Instead of seeing silence as a failure, experience it as an opportunity to observe how you both handle natural conversational rhythms. These moments provide authentic information about how this specific person responds to real-life friction, helping determine whether there's genuine compatibility rather than just surface-level attraction. The most meaningful connections often emerge from the unique way two people navigate imperfection together. The specific way you recover from awkward moments, find humor in misalignments, and create your particular rhythm forms the foundation of connection. This doesn't develop despite awkward moments. It develops through them. Beyond carefully selected photos, practiced stories, and polished self-presentation, genuine compatibility emerges from how two people move through the world together, including the awkward, imperfect moments that reveal who we really are. The halo effect will continue to shape your perceptions whether you know about it or not. That's the thing about cognitive biases. Awareness doesn't make them disappear. But understanding gives you something powerful, the ability to question your initial impressions. Next time you experience attraction online, remember your brain is filling in blanks with idealized qualities. When meeting someone creates a disconnect between fantasy and reality, embrace this moment as clarity, not disappointment. This is your opportunity for authentic connection. How many of your own dating experiences suddenly make sense now? Take this awareness forward into your next relationship.